Kevin Gordon from Autosavant.com. In the 2013 Ford Explorer Limited. This one has all-wheel drive as well as Ford's descriptively named 302A package, which basically gets you every piece of technology. This one also has the tow package for $600, but the one thing it doesn't have is a sunroof, which is a little odd in something that's optioned as highly as this one is. It costs $47,700. The base version of the car with no option comes in just under $40,000, and there's $7,000 in options on this car. $6,500 of that is the 302A package, which gets you the big pile of technology. It's got lane keep assist, lane departure warning, radar-guided cruise control, blind spot warning. It has rear seat belt airbags as well as rear curtain airbags. So that's one of those interesting features on the Explorer, is the fact that it actually has airbags that are in the seat belts in the rear passenger side. So I'll show you a picture of those. It drives just like every other unibody 3-row SUV out there. The engine, this one, the 3.7 liter V6 that's made it across a lot of Ford's lineup at this point. This one has no turbos, which is getting to be more and more rare for Ford, it seems, these days. Well, it does a fine job of motivating the Explorer along. It's not really sporty in any stretch of the imagination, but it's not really caught out either in highway emerging and passing. The steering, again, it's pretty much what you'd expect. It's a little numb, not a ton of feeling about what's going on there. The one thing you quickly notice is the fact that the all-wheel drive system on the Explorer is very front-wheel drive biased. So in wet and slippery conditions, if you're stomping on it, going around a corner or merging onto a highway on-ramp, you'll notice a little bit of tug and pull from the front wheels, even though it's an all-wheel drive system and the rears have the ability to motivate the car as well. The ride is well composed. It's well damped without being harsh at all. You get a bit of body roll and lean in the corners, as you sort of would expect in anything that's this size. No real harshness that comes through from a noise, harshness, and vibration perspective. The Explorer does a pretty nice job of being a serene place in here on the highway and even on choppy roads. This is one area where the Explorer starts, unfortunately, to fall apart for me. The seats are fine, I suppose you could say, but the seat actually is pretty narrow, and the armrest and door are really far away from it. It's rare that there's a lot of cars you can just shove your hands down on both sides of the seat. So I don't know if it's built for very girthy Americans or what the deal is, but you get the feeling, a lot of ways I find in the same in the Taurus, that there's a lot of interior dimension in here that they're not taking full advantage of. It's like, I feel like you can get a bigger, more comfortable seat while still not feeling crushed into either of these pieces without giving up too much. In the actual seating position, as far as where you are to the pedals and where they are to the steering wheel, so you get power adjustable steering wheel, so you can really move it in and out quite a bit, and the seat's adjustable. But I have to say that I've had a bit of a challenge really finding a comfortable long-term driving position in the Explorer. I don't know what it is about the placement of the steering wheel and the pedals and the seat. I mean, the seat suffers from what a lot of seats do these days, which is it's enormously short from a thigh support perspective. So you really wind up sitting sort of just on your butt without a ton of leg support. And the pedal box drops off well. The pedals aren't in a bad position, but there's just been something about it that doesn't come across comfortable for me. From a first pass, the interior looks fine. They've done a nice job of trying to put some detailed pieces and accents in here. You get the big center stack that the Ford MyTouch cars have, come to be known for. All these details are well finished, but when you really get down to sort of the touch and the feel of all this stuff, this is all hard up here. This is a hard, scratchy piece of plastic. This has some soft touch to it, but nothing too special. I think the biggest sort of complaint I would have about it is all this stuff in the door. When you open the door, you get this big, thick wraparound dash in the Explorer, but it just comes across as a bit low quality from, a look and a feeling perspective, at least from a second look and feel perspective. Again, first pass, you sort of look at it and go, oh, it's all fine. But when you really start to live with it, it just comes across feeling a little under market compared to the other options you can get out there for $47,000. You can definitely put your kids in it. I think the biggest issue that you'd have is if you have 3 little kids who are still in boosters, the issue you're going to run into is that second row, which does very nicely get out of the way to provide access to the third, does that only really if you don't have a car seat plugged into it. So if you do, it becomes a real challenge to sort of just get it forward enough and shove one of your younger spawn into the third row. Now this one with this 302A package comes with the power tumble fold third row, which is a very nice feature. You get either a big deep storage well with the seats up, the ability to just fold them flat, or the ability to stow them in that storage well and get a perfectly flat load floor back there, so you get a big cavernous space back there. So that is one of the things that the Explorer seems to do well from a storage and practicality standpoint. The second row is very comfortable. Front and rear leg room for those 2 rows seems to be good. Well, the Ford MyTouch system that is in the Explorer, it's really the first time I've experienced this version of Ford MyTouch. And I'll be honest, up until now, I've been pretty accommodating, at least pretty friendly to the Ford MyTouch setup. And it's actually amazing how different it is in the Explorer than it is in a lot of the other cars that I've been in. So this is one with really only one knob, which is a scroll wheel for volume. Everything else is soft touch, meaning there's icons for it, but every press isn't met with any kind of indent. It really is just a touch sensitive panel as well as the screen. And I guess I can finally understand why this system's been given such a hard time. It really is unintuitive. It's difficult to interact with while you're driving. It's slow to respond. A bunch of stuff happens you don't expect. Like if you make the mistake of sort of resting your thumb on any of these panels, you'll find the fan up at full speed when you're not expecting it. And understand, I've actually been a person who's defended the Ford MyTouch system. I mean, I think a lot of other manufacturers, Chrysler, for example, have gone to these full touch systems. But Ford's really is the worst of the bunch. So It's the worst of the full touch system bunch, as weird of sort of a descriptor as that is. You get a ton of technology, and if you're willing to sort of dive through the menus and get to the pieces, they do work well. The Bluetooth in this car's work phenomenally. Ford doesn't have the issue of you get to the car with Bluetooth playing, whether radio or something else on your phone and getting back into it and not picking it right back up. It does that. The issue is actually interacting with the screen, and they've gone to their pretty standard. If you want to see it, we did a full deep dive on the Ford Edge. So they're pretty standard, 4-quadrant layout. That all I'm actually okay with. It's just this one and the touchscreen setup in it. It just fails, unfortunately, in its execution. All the rest of the technology that's part of the 302A package on the limited Ford Explorer works pretty well. I will say the lane keep assist, which you actually have to activate by pushing a button on the stalk, which gets you an extra diagram up there, will keep you in lane. I mean, if you take your hands off the wheel, it'll pull itself back into the lanes. Now, it does it, in all honesty, if there was a car next to you, after you probably would have already sideswiped the person that's there, but it's one of the more active systems that's out there in the market. The blind spot detection works well. The radio guided cruise control isn't the most elegant of systems that I've experienced. If you get free space in front of you, it takes a long time before the car picks up speed to what you have it set at, and if somebody merges in front of you, it doesn't brake harshly, but it really tightens up that gap, which I like. But if it's naturally pulling up to a car, it leaves a big gap in the system. The one plus of it is when you turn on, the gap, which is a little switch here on the steering wheel on cruise control, it starts on the shortest setting, which is nice because most of the systems out there seem to start on the most distant setting and then expect you to go and crank it up to the shorter following distances. I think the other thing to note about this layout of the Explorer is what they've done with the gauge pack. So in the center you get a big standard analog speedometer, flanked on both sides by information screens. The left one typically gives you RPM, distance empty, how much fuel's in the tank, hot and cold of the engine, that kind of stuff. And the right side gets you another interface to what's going on with the navigation screen. But here again, I think the unfortunate part is the systems that leave themselves to have an analog, an actual physical tachometer, and then just have the big center screen in the middle, do a better job than this. The digital display version of an analog tachometer in this car, I could really just take it or leave it. It doesn't provide a lot, and the rest of the menus in there to do other settings and stuff, you really do need to dig through, and it requires a lot of button pushes of their 4-way toggle switches they have on the steering wheel, and the same thing for the information display. This one works for me. You get phone, entertainment, navigation, and climate controls. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money for a lot of technology and content, I will say that. I mean, it's very easy to price these types of 3-row SUVs to basically the $50,000 barrier without much trouble when you load them up with all of the options. But I think the thing that's hurt the Explorer isn't its drive or its engine or its ride. It's just the little fine touches that don't really make it, in my impression, the leading of the 3-row SUVs that are out there today. I mean, all of these things, of course, come down to personal preference, but I can say if I was plunking my money down for something like this, I don't think this would be my choice in the market at this point. So I'm Kevin Gordon from Autosavant.com. I look forward to talking to you guys soon.